To Hit and Hustle from IrishSportsDaily.com. I am your host, Greg Famong, and we've got another exciting interview with former player Shaun Crawford coming up today. We're going to be talking about perseverance. We're going to be talking about playing nickel, how difficult it is to play nickel, moving from nickel to corner to safety, and all those other things, talking about his time at Notre Dame. And then we're going to be talking about how he thinks Notre Dame could take the next step as a program. So we're going to get to that in just 1 second. But first, I want to talk to you about ESQ clothing. And if you're looking to upgrade your wardrobe this spring, ESQ has created the world's first bamboo dress shirt. You've seen it at the Kentucky Derby. You've seen it at the White House. You see it whenever Marcus Freeman is out on a recruiting visit. He is always wearing it. It's crafted from high quality bamboo fabric. It's the softest and most comfortable shirt you'll ever put on. It's not only more sustainable than cotton, but it feels cooler, has stretch, is odor and wrinkle resistant, and it's even machine washable. So you can check out esqclothing.com and upgrade your shirt game. And you're going to want to do that. It's a great, great product. And we wear it all the time. I wore it the other day. My wife and I, we went out on a dinner date, wore my ESQ shirt, felt comfortable the whole time. So you're going to want to check it out. esqclothing.com, upgrade your shirt game. All right, now let's get to Shaun Crawford. All right, we are here with former Notre Dame defensive back and current host of the Varsity House podcast, Shaun Crawford. Shaun, thanks for coming on the show.
Greg, thanks for having me.
Absolutely, absolutely. As you know, we were talking before the show. I've been trying to get former players on the show to talk about their experience at Notre Dame. You have an extensive experience at Notre Dame, so you're a very good person to come on and talk about it. But I'm very curious as to why you decided to get into the podcast game. You're the first person to come on my show who actually is involved in something similar to this, where you're interviewing former players, not just football players, but you're talking to professional athletes, current and former. You recently had Braxton Miller on your show. I saw that. You've talked to Jeremiah Wusu-Koramoah. You talked to Kyle Hamilton. You talked to Kyron Williams. Tell me why you wanted to get into that and what was the motivation behind getting into this venture?
Mm-hmm. Well, for me, obviously you mentioned that I had an extensive, career at Notre Dame. And so for me, one of the big things, was I feel like a lot of people, whether it be, Notre Dame fans or just college football fans in general, and maybe even some friends that are close to me, maybe just didn't understand like the journey, within that I maybe went through day in and day out. And so there was a podcast called Stronger Scars that was ran by a former student athlete here named Bailey Cartwright. She was a soccer player, and she asked me to get on her podcast, and maybe this was my junior year, and I said I just ignored the message honestly because I was like, I don't want to talk about anything. I'm good. But then like another year came around and I was like, you know what, I guess it is time for me to, kind of open up about my adversity, open up about my career here at Notre Dame. And so I went on there and it was like maybe an hour and a half. And it was just like us having a conversation. And it was the first time that I've actually opened up to anyone about just the struggles that I went through, just to the mental hurdle that I went through and just all those things. And so I loved it so much. We even did part 2. So I came back on maybe another year later, and we did a part 2, and it was another great conversation. And so from that moment on, I kind of knew that not only me, but there's other athletes, other just people who have a story to tell, who have a story to share, who have a unique upbringing, a unique background. And so for me, this is just an opportunity just to create that safe space, that safe platform for like the guys you mentioned, or just anyone, any female athletes, any female role models, anyone like that, just to create a platform for them to share their stories, to talk through anything that they may be going through currently as well, because obviously, I think from my story, it could be a younger generation could use my story as motivation or anything like that. And so I just wanted to provide a platform for those who may have something to say, and some who may not. It may not be as deep or as as hard as my story, but we all, there's something unique about us all. And you don't get to the big leagues, or you don't get to graduate from Notre Dame or just anything like that without having a unique story, a unique background. So that was kind of just a motive behind it.
Yeah, I totally understand that. And that's kind of what I've been trying to do here as well. Just getting to know former players. Like we follow you guys, right? And we know you as players. Like everyone knows you as Notre Dame's nickel or Notre Dame's, corner or safety or whatever it is. But like there's obviously more to it, right? And like I think I've always been very curious about what it is to actually go through the process of being a Notre Dame football player and what like we discuss the life that goes into like you're a student and you're obviously a major college football player. Like how hard is that? Like people talk about it, but we don't talk to the players about it. And so that's kind of what I wanted to do here. So let's get into your background a little bit. St. Edward's, you went to St. Edward's High School in Ohio. Huge football, right? Like that's like as high as you can get on the national scale as far as a football program. And I believe you were first committed to Michigan, right?
Yes, correct.
So go through that process. Tell me about like being first committed to Michigan, then coming over to Notre Dame. This was in 2014. And you were obviously you're 5'8", right? Not the biggest guy, but clearly you were a two-way player at St. Edward's. You played in the slot, you played defensive back, you played in the slot a lot, you returned kickoffs for touchdowns and that sort of thing. And we were talking before the show, I compared you to Dory Jackson in terms of your playmaking ability, right? You had a 10.54 100-meter time. So that's blazing, right? Like that's very fast. So tell me about the process of, being recruited and then first committing to Michigan and then eventually flipping to Notre Dame.
Well, I'd say back then, but it's not too long ago, but it's definitely different. Recruiting is definitely different now than it was back then. To where now, you got college coaches year round, pulling out the red carpet, completely different. But for me, it was I started competing nationally as a 7-year-old, just running AAU track, running the Junior Olympics, and so for me, I was always competitive. I knew I had a special talent, just being able just to compete nationally in track, and then carrying that over into football when I started with flag, then I went into 8-year-old tackle and things like that, and so. I was always, one of the fastest on the team, one of the most athletic on the team. And so I've always played two ways and both ways. And so kind of that's what, led me to St. Ed's, wanting to play against the best competition in the state of Ohio and then also have the opportunity to travel outside of Ohio and play, against the best. And so for me, about my stature, I never really paid attention to it just because, maybe the first time that it mattered was college because in high school, you're not going to get you may get a couple 6'4" receivers but you're not going to play against, that type of like the Notre Dame type of schedule or type of talent each and every week in high school. So in high school, it was just me doing what I was doing since I was 7, 8 years old, playing both ways, playing safety, playing corner, and then also playing some running back, playing some receiver. And then it was just, how dominant can you be? And so when I was playing, at St. Ed's, I got my first offer after my sophomore season from Illinois, and it was surprising just because it even came a shock to my dad. Like I called him, he goes, "Are you serious?" I was like, "Yeah." He said, "Get out of here." I'm like, "No, I'm serious. I just talked to the coach." And so for me, it was just always fun just playing football. And I think at that moment, that's when it first hit that like, okay, I could, go Division I and play at a big level. And so I grew up a Michigan fan. I know it's weird from Cleveland, Ohio. You're supposed to be an Ohio State fan, but grew up a Michigan fan. My dad was a Michigan fan, so I grew up there. And then loved them growing up, like the Chad Henne, Mike Harts, like Mario Manningham, like those were my squads. So, and then also NCAA, those were my squads playing them in the video game. And so when that offer came, it came before Notre Dame. I committed on actually my birthday going into my junior year.
So this would have been 2013.
Yeah. So long time. Yeah. Right. So, so I was very excited. I thought that was where I was going to go. And, obviously Michigan during that time, I think they had Brady Hoke was a coach, but I don't think they were doing that well, as the record on the field. And then Notre Dame, this is right at like post national championship, and things like that. So it just And then when Notre Dame came around, I've told this story, a bunch of times, but when I came on a visit to Notre Dame before I ended up committing to Michigan, Bob Diaco was the DC at the time. Coach Kelly was still the head coach. And so Bob Diaco, if you know his scheme, he had Bennett Jackson, he had Kavari Russell, he had like taller corners, bigger corners.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just didn't fit his scheme. And so therefore I wasn't offered after my visit. And so fast forward, I committed to Michigan, and then so we played my junior year, did pretty well. Played or improved on the previous year, and then Coach Kelly hired Coach Van Gorder. They pretty much reopened the recruiting process because after that point, I like shut Notre Dame down. They said I don't fit their scheme.
Yeah.
I can't control if I grow or not, and so
right.
that was the first time that like, okay, wow, height, size may matter. And then, but I got my dream school. I'm happy. Like I'm good to go. And so when Notre Dame came back around and started opening up, the recruiting process and everything like that again, it became a tough decision because I remember my first ever visit was to Notre Dame was when I met Coach Kelly the first time and Coach Diaco. And when you step on campus for the very first time, anyone, like as a kid, as a grown up, Notre Dame fan or not, it's special, and you feel that. And coming from a Catholic high school, St. Ed's, it just felt like it felt like where I belonged. It felt like this was just the next step up. And so, and obviously, the great education, NBC contract, play USC, all those great things that come with it. It was like, all right, this is where I need to be. And then unfortunately I didn't get offered, but I knew as soon as Coach Kelly called me and he's like, I'm sorry. Like we got a new, he's like, I'm sorry. We got a new DC. He loves you. He would love to talk to you. So we opened it back up, and I was like, this is going to be a tough decision because if Notre Dame had offered me that first time, I wouldn't have committed to Michigan. I probably would have just held off for a while and held on to the decision.
Right.
But long story short, I ended up committing, and it turned out to, 7 years later, it turned out to be the best decision that I've ever made. Coach Van Gorder, Coach Kelly, even when I got on campus as a freshman, they gave me the opportunity to play right away. They gave me the opportunity to play as a freshman. And so going from, not fitting the scheme and, not being able to receive a scholarship to Notre Dame to being able to compete for a starting position day one at camp. And so I always I'm really good friends with Matthias Farley, who happened to be the guy that I was competing with. He's a fifth year, I was a freshman. And we talk about it like every time we talk about just me being brought in to take his spot. And so it's a funny conversation, but I just, condone those guys just for, providing me that opportunity and being true to their word. But that was, pretty much my recruiting process. It was pretty those two schools basically. And then, once Notre Dame came, knocking and showed like the real true interest, and I began to meet the recruiting class and all those things and other coaches, it was a no-brainer.
So you weren't just brought in to take his spot. But Matthias has been very open about the fact that you had taken it. It was you were going to win the nickel job, and you were going to be Notre Dame's starter at the nickel in 2015, your freshman year. He's been open about it. He said he came in, you won the job in 2 weeks. That's what he said. He's quoted. That's on the record. But this is when we get into the kind of the struggles that you went through, right? And I listened to you talk about, you've been playing track, or running track as 7, 8 year old, playing football, 7, 8 year old. And there's from that point to, your freshman year at Notre Dame, like you're always playing and you're always involved and you're always out there, and there's something about being an athlete, whatever happens, whatever, win or lose, or you have a bad game or a good race or bad race, you're always out there. And then in the fall camp of your freshman year, you tear your ACL, which as an athlete who is, I've had, I've lost years to like torn hamstrings, right? Like I've lost opportunities to play because of things like that. And that is very difficult. Just not just being hurt, but like you can't play and you can't be out there. You tear your ACL. So you lose your freshman year. You come back from that. You came back from that early. Like I remember you were competing, I think it was spring of 2016. And it was like, how is he even out here? You're wearing a green jersey. So it was like, okay, like he's going to be a factor again. Win the corner job in 2016. Your first game against Texas, intercept a pass, return it inside the 10. Notre Dame scores. That's part of the big comeback. You recover the blocked extra point for 2 points that allows you guys to go into overtime. You eventually lose that game. And then in the first series of your first home start against, I think it was Nevada, right? Nevada, yeah. They throw a post route, you break it up, you tear your Achilles. And I just remember like seeing you come off the field, and then on the sideline, they show it on TV, like everyone's consoling you. And it's like, that only happens for one reason, you know, and you don't know what it is, but you know it's serious when that's going on. Like, tell me about that. Like, tell me about going, like rehabbing yourself, getting back early, and then having something like that happen again. Like, tell me like how difficult that was, and like what that kind of like the mental fortitude that took to come back from those things.
Yeah. Well, first off, in fall camp, it's funny that, you know, Matthias talks about it, because he was, you know, one of the best leaders that I've ever been around. Like, although the job, I may have been taking his job, he was there sitting with me in the meeting rooms, day in and day out, you know, helping me catch up to speed, you know, helping me on film and all those things. And so when you get around, you know, when you're around a bunch of guys like Jalen Smith and Ronnie Stanley and Quentin Nelson and Will Fuller and all these guys, and I'm competing, and I'm running with the ones. At this point, it's like I'm on cloud nine. There's an opportunity I could be starting on a elite defense. Like, if you look at that roster, we had elite talent on that team. Sheldon Day, you know, who was Max Redfield, Elijah Shoemake, like or I don't know if Kavari was back. Kavari was back. Yes. Yeah, Cole Luke. So all those guys, and it's just like there's a piece. There is a piece for me, and you know, being one of the only freshmen, you know, outside of Jerry Tillery, to be on the field, it was exciting, because at that point, like, your entire class is behind you. You're telling your friends, you're telling your families, but you're back home that, you know, things are going well. And so you're feeling really good. And at this point, it's just like, now I just have to just continue to do what I'm doing, just play ball. And so when that injury happens, it's tough, because this was when we had 2 days, because it was in a one-on-one drill, our second practice. So like, we had our first practice, we came back out, and we were doing a one-on-one drill, and I was doing it against CJ Sanders, who's one of my great friends, and ended up tearing my ACL. And at that point, I've never missed I probably missed 2 games in my entire career up to that point.
Yeah.
And it was maybe a high ankle sprain. So it wasn't anything, you know, serious or anything like that. And so I was 17 at that time as well. So being a 17-year-old away from home and away from family, when everything in your, you know, life is looking really good, like you made the right decision, it all stops. And you kind of, at that moment, I just cried. And at that point, I talked to my family, but I feel like I always tell people I was fine until they came across the ESPN ticker. Like, until everyone knew, I was good, because I could reach out to the people who I wanted to know. I could talk to them. I could make sure that they know that I'm good. But as soon as, like, I probably got hurt on, maybe I'm just throwing out days, but like a Monday. And then I think it came out on a Thursday after they got the, you know, the MRI and all that stuff. It officially came out. And so having just, you know, a swarm of text messages and all those things, it was tough in that situation, but it was motivating, because I had guys like Drew Tranquil around me who pushed, without him, like, I think my life is different, but also just my mindset is different if I didn't have Drew in that situation. Just because you fast forward a little bit, Drew ends up getting hurt that year.
Yeah.
And so from that point on, when it was just me and Drew in the training room, we were competing. And so when you talk about being back early, one of the goals, and this could be a trainer trick that they do or anything like that, but, you know, I was a 17-year-old freshman. I'm naive. I just want to get back on the field as fast as possible. And so they're like, you know, maybe bowl game. Like, if we make it to the playoffs, you'll be, because I got hurt early in August.
Yeah.
So they were like, maybe, if we make it to the playoffs and things like that. So like that was always in the back of my mind, to where it was like, if we make, and we had a really, really good chance to make
Yeah.
it that year.
Yeah.
And so that was, the year went on, and me and Drew were pushing each other, and also Torian Folston, like he ended up getting hurt that year. And so we had great guys on the field when, started the season, but that was a year that we had a lot of injuries happen. And so I felt that like it was, if I could just keep pushing, keep fighting, I could maybe get back. And so obviously I didn't come back that year. But I learned a lot. Like it gave me an opportunity to enjoy my freshman year, being around, a lot of guys who redshirt, getting to, you meet regular students on campus, experience home games, and, not have the stress of actually playing the game, that young. And I just kind of took that as like like a redshirt year. I learned a lot. I learned from a lot of the veterans in the room. I watched how they practice. It gave me an opportunity to really learn and not have any stress of playing. And I could just, get bigger, I could get stronger, and I could do all those things all in the same year, to where year two I'll be ready to go. And it also, I had the confidence that I knew I could play. I knew I could play at this level. I knew I could start on this team. So now I just got to get myself right, bigger and better, and then I'll be good. And so come year two, spring ball, I was, I did spring ball, and I knew I was fine, because I remember I was playing a cover two corner in the boundary, and Quentin Nelson pulled. So and he ruined it. He wrecked me. So I was like, good. All the coaches were like looking, and I like got up and ran, and they were like, okay, so he's good. And so I knew from that point on, like my knee was strong. So I was like, the doctors did a great job. Like I'm ready to go. Like that was the like I didn't know where it was going to come or what play, but that was the play that my confidence, came back with, like in my knee. And so earned the starting corner role. Also played nickel, that Texas game, and did that too. And so it was it was a roller coaster of events, that Texas game, but it was also, for me, it was like, okay, I'm back. It was a lot of my friends, a lot of my family are waiting on this game, just because that's like my return back. And for me to have that much of an impact in the game, it was like, okay, this is now he's taking off. Like this, and for the fans too, what they heard in the first 2 weeks of summer camp, whether, the coaches, raving about me or anything like that. Now the fans and supporters of Notre Dame will be able to see that in year two. And so we get to my first home game, and I don't know what happened. I go and break up the pass. I thought it was a sprained ankle, honestly. Like I get to the sideline and I tell them, like, I sprained my ankle. I can't walk. I can't, like, my foot's, I can't move my foot or anything like that. And then they do the little test, and they told me it was a torn Achilles. And I think that there's a picture, it might be from TV, of just like Torrey Hunter coming over and putting his arm around me, and which is a fifth year guy. And I kind of look back at that as to like how many fifth year guys or how many older guys, come and console a young sophomore or anything like that. And so I feel like just the impact of, the people know like just how hard I worked within the building. And that I kind of think that like that did it for me. And you can kind of show like whether it was my freshman year, everyone knew what I went through within the building. And then sophomore year, they saw what the work that I put in to get to that point. And so it was obviously tough, that situation is hard. And then having to, crutch off the field and doing those things. And now knowing that I'm going to be out a whole, another season, it's challenging, because now you're challenging, did you make the right decision? That's the personal choice. Like, why is this happening to me? My friends and family are like, are they, dang, like, so unlucky? Are the fans just, over me? Are the fans like done with me? And so there's a lot of, things that you kind of have to juggle just, personally and mentally, just to continue to just fight through those things. But we ended up having a terrible year that year. So, I told myself like, okay, this was, if there was a year to miss, like this is the year to miss. So I just tried to find little things, just to keep me up and keep me going.
Well, another thing too that might have been going on through your mind, and I'm curious to know if it was, is Notre Dame was having a bad year that year. I mean, there was talk about Brian Kelly being fired. your defensive coordinator, Brian Van Gorder, was. So he was replaced in the middle of the year. Did that make you nervous? Because, based on how your recruiting process was, like you were recruited to play in Brian Van Gorder's scheme, and now they're bringing in a new DC, whoever it is. Did that make you nervous? Like even then, like, man, I've gotten hurt twice for the year. The defensive coordinator who recruited me is now out. Like, do I even fit anymore? Like, did that go into your mind at that point?
I would say no, just because I knew the confidence that I had in myself. From the little football that I did play, I knew that I belonged on the field, whether it was corner, nickel, or anywhere on the field. I knew the guys that we had in the room, and I knew that they looked up to me in a leadership role, and so I knew that there would be a way that I would get on the field, and I honestly couldn't worry about that, and I knew Coach Kelly. At that point, we've talked enough. He's seen it. He's seen enough from me to where he was going to give me the opportunity to play, to earn a starting spot. And I always talk about, there are fans, there are people in media who hate Coach Kelly, and everyone has their own reason. But I like playing for Coach Kelly, and one reason, or a reason why I'll never, talk bad about him, is because he's always given me an opportunity to come back and start. Now, there's maybe other coaches or other programs around, the country that, if a guy gets hurt 2 times, they may want him to transfer, or they can't force someone to transfer. They may, incline it, or they may, throw him to the back of the roster. That was never the case with me. And so for that, I always, respected Coach Kelly for that. And even when Coach Elko came in, it was different. Don't get me wrong, it was a completely different, scheme, style of coaching, because in Van Gorder's defense, he gave me a lot of wiggle room. We consult, because being an NFL coach, he kind of let me do the things that I was most comfortable at. Whereas Coach Elko, that wasn't the case. And so I felt like for Coach Elko's defense, he needed a nickel. A nickel was important in his defense.
Mm-hmm.
We had Jay Love and I forget the other corner, maybe Nick Watkins, and then yep. So we all rotated there at corner, and then I was the sole nickel. And so that year it wasn't as far as like I needed the most reps. I just needed the reps that I did get. I just needed to make them count. And so when I got in that nickel, I owned that position. When I got in at corner, I tried to just do the best that I can, just to to make plays at that position as well. And so early on in that year, the Boston College game, I ended up having 2 interceptions, recovering a fumble, and then the Michigan State game, forcing a fumble, and doing all those things to where that wasn't necessarily a surprise to me. And I don't necessarily think it was a surprise to my teammates either, or coaches either. It was just, an opportunity had to present itself. And that was just, me being available on the field. And so I would just say I was always confident in my skill. I just knew that the only thing that was holding me back was just not being on the field.
Yeah. So you referenced in 2017, it happened for you. You were I don't know that you started every game, but like you were the nickel, like you were Notre Dame's nickel. And so in that sense, you are a starter, because like when nickel comes in, you're in there, right? So you played a ton of snaps in 2017. What is it about you that you are able to be around the ball all the time? I mean, some guys, like you can have a guy who's just like, they're out there and they're just out there. That they for whatever reason, they're not around the ball. You are always in it. You're always in it. Like you said, Boston College, you get an interception. The Michigan State game, they're going in. It's gonna be 14 up, right? It's like they're gonna tie the game, and there you are, just like right at the goal line. You strip it out, and of course the guy tries to fall on it, and he can't. And there you are, like to fall on it, right? So it's just like you are always around the ball, and you always had that, right? So 2017, you're able to be around the ball, make plays. You make a ton of plays on the ball. 2019, same thing, right? Like you're involved all the time. And in 2020, it's the same kind of deal. What is it about you that you are able to, make plays on the ball, be around the ball, like find the ball? Like people always, like I always talk about players when I watch them on film, like this guy finds the ball, or the ball finds him somehow. Like how were you? What is it about you that you're able to be involved in so many plays?
I honestly think it goes back to high school. So my senior class, I we had I believe 8 guys go Division 1.
Mm,
We had 5 on defense, and so it was very competitive in the back end on who's going to make the most plays, who's going to get their hands on the ball, and things like that. And so pursuit and effort to the ball was a huge thing, that was preached to me even just in high school. And so and now, going to college to where playing nickel is I'm a step or I'm a position closer to the ball as well, which is sometimes why I hate corner, just because corner could get a little bit boring.
mm,
Just because you're sometimes on an island, you can't really get involved in a run. And so that's really why I love nickel. Like if there's a run play, whether it's if I'm to the field or if they run, to the boundary, if I pursue fast enough or if I see it quick enough, I can still, get in on that tackle or anything like that. And so pretty much any, RPO game you're involved in,
mm-hmm.
any routes, within the receive or both receivers, honestly, depending on if you're a man or if you're in zone, because we can buzz out to the flat and be
Right.
involved with the number 1 receiver as well. So you're just in a position to make plays. And obviously I credit that to the nickel, but it's honestly just, one, just staying attached to the receiver. And usually, quarterbacks love throwing, or the easiest throw is the middle of the field, or obviously, closer to him. And so most quarterbacks are, I would say, right hand dominant. So when we play to the field, we play to the strong side. And so most quarterbacks are throwing to that side. We're obviously guarding pretty much the inside receiver a lot. So a lot of the action we get is always closer to the quarterback, closer to the ball. And you play closer up to the line of scrimmage as well. You're at linebacker depth. And so it just, honestly, I think it just depends on, being, and obviously a lot of it has positioning, but a lot of it has to do with being savvy. I know even one of the interceptions I had against Boston College, Coach Elko was kind of upset because I'm supposed to turn into the receiver to deflect the ball, but I turned like a receiver and made an interception.
Yeah.
So it's just like doing things like that to where, my mindset is, turn and attack the ball instead of just like turning and playing through the hands of the receiver.
Yeah.
Or if I'm big fan of Charles Tillman and Tyrann Mathieu, like huge fan of those guys. So my idea of, tackling a running back going into the goal line, he's going to score regardless. So if I tackle him or not, he's on the 1 yard line.
His momentum's taking him in.
He's going to score. So my thought was, forget the tackle. Let me just try to punch the ball out. It happened to come out. And so then it was a thing of, we also repped Coach Elko and Coach Lee. We rep punching the ball out a ton in practice each week. So that's just like my mindset is how can I affect the game and how can I change the game? Because you look at it, football is a numbers game. If you're lucky, you get probably like 80 snaps a game on defense, 70 snaps a game on defense. And if you can, get one punch out, one forced fumble, like you change the game. Or if you can, get your hands on, or if you can get one TFL, 2 TFLs, you can change the game. There's a lot of opportunity. And so that's kind of how I saw it. And I didn't take it every moment. Like in the open field, I was a little bit more safe. But if the running backs, already wrapped up, or there's a situation to where they don't see me, then I'll throw a punch at the ball. Or if I think I can get my hands on the ball, I'm gonna take that. I'm gonna take that shot. Because it comes in practice. It's not something that I'm trying new in the game. And so I think coaches saw me, attempt those things in practice and do crazy things in practice to where it's like, if I did it in a game, it didn't work out. It's like, okay, well, like, that's kind of him. So I think they would, you would live and die with it.
Yeah. So 2017, you played all year, right? And that was a good team. You guys ended up winning was it the Citrus Bowl? I'm trying to remember what exactly the bowl game.
You beat Citrus against LSU.
LSU. That was the Ian Book to Miles Boykin game. Mm-hmm. And so then 2018 in camp, you tear your ACL again. Where does your mindset at that point?
That one was different because the injury felt different. Freshman year, it was my knees messed up. like I knew it because I just felt the pop. This one, I just kind of felt the twist. It was in 101 again. So I just told, at my 5th and 6th year, I was like, Coach, these 101s, we got to take a break. We got to take a break on these 101s. Like, so, but it was in a 101 drill, and like it hurt. Like I twisted, I got up funny, but this time I walked to the sideline. Before I was grabbing my knee and screaming, but this time I was able to walk to the sideline. They checked it out. Again, this might be another trainer trick. They told me we'll check it. I can't tell. We'll have to wait and see. And I'm sitting on the field, so this could also be, for just my mental stress level is don't tell him right now. Like let him finish practice, let him go in and get checked by the doctor. And so I ended up doing that, and then they ended up telling me, but that year it was different just because Elko had left. Coach Lee was now to DC. We had some plans of it was really weird. Like I was already like being introduced as safety a little bit that year. There was a package of me being like a buck linebacker. It was just going to be like very special that year because we were really solid on the outside with J Love and with Troy on the outside. And then, so we were just going to try to find ways to include me just like more into the box and things like that. And so I was very excited. I was really excited to get to that season, and obviously to play Michigan too, week 1, a team that I was, committed to. So everything was just, very excited. And then I get that news. I didn't even when the first 2 times I just broke down, and this time I was kind of just like numb to it. I just sat there and just was just silent. I called my parents, and obviously those were always the 3 hardest calls that I've ever had to make to my parents. But just sat there and just disbelief at that point. I was just lost for words. And I went out and told Coach Lee, and this was a moment I'll never forget. We just ended up crying on the field together, talking over it and things like that. But for me, other injuries, I was in a rush to, get back. So freshman year, I was in a rush to try to play later that year. Sophomore year, the Achilles, obviously that injury is a little bit longer, so I couldn't rush too fast to get back. But I knew there was just so much more in front of me, so that I wanted to get to. And then senior year, I was like, this is my senior year. I'm just going to enjoy this moment with the guys. And so obviously there were times where, I was frustrated that I couldn't be out there, but ultimately, seeing them be successful and seeing them have fun, I just took it as that was my approach to that season. Let me be a leader for the young guys. Let me have fun with my senior class. Let me enjoy this moment. And then, football is going to be there. I have a 5th year. I'm not, I'm not in a rush to get to the fifth year. I know I even have a 6th year. I'm not in a rush to get to the 6th year. And so I just really enjoyed and just stayed in that moment. And that was, probably one of the, my best times at Notre Dame, is because I stopped worrying. I stopped stressing, and then just let everything happen how it was going to happen. And we ended up having an amazing year. And so in that year, I was able to travel on road games, be able to help guys out more of as a coaching, an assistant with the nickel and things like that. So it was fun times. And I also got to have some fun, on campus as well, just being a regular student.
Gotcha. Yeah. So you mentioned that they were already moving you around, and so you were working at safety a little bit. You worked at safety a good amount in 2019. A lot, mostly in the slot still, but in 2019 you were working mostly. You were working mostly in the slot, a little bit at safety, and then 2020 you were full-time safety. You played corner against Florida State in 2020, but mostly you were playing safety next to Kyle Hamilton. How hard is it to go from corner to nickel to safety, and especially how hard was it to learn the safety spot? Because there's been some talk this year about Notre Dame moving players. Like Clarence Lewis, who you played with in 2020. There's been some discussion. I don't know if the coaches are thinking about this at all, but there's been some discussion about him moving over to safety. And there's been, discussion about how hard that actually is. You've gone through that. How hard was it to learn a new position like safety coming from nickel and corner?
Mm-hmm. Well, I would say nickel was always the easiest for me, just because I came in as a freshman and like I learned run fits, I learned like zone drops, I learned everything. So nickel was always easy for me, and that was something that it's probably the hardest of the three, but that was the first thing that I learned, so it was one of the easiest things for me. And then going from corner's job is, it's not that hard. You're either pretty much in man or zone.
Yeah.
Your run fits pretty much stay the same, and all of the coverages maybe except cover two. But that was pretty easy. But I thought the transition, because I got a little taste of it in 2019, and I was like, okay, cool. Like I could do this. It's not that hard. But just it's really different, because at corner, well, first off, from the start of the play, you call, as a safety, you call the strength of the defense, or this is what we used to do. I don't know who calls the strength of the defense now, but as a safety, we call the strength of the defense. We called the play, the coverage to the corner and the nickel. We let them know. And so just from that aspect alone, it was a bigger challenge. And something that, obviously if you talk to Coach Lee or talk to Kyle, like that was something that I wasn't maybe as vocal on the field. I kind of always just like lined up and pretty much played. And Kyle was all pretty much the same way. Like if you put us in the right position, we'll go make a play. And that was what Alohi and Jalen were amazing at. Those two guys are natural born leaders, and are very vocal on the field, and take control of the defense. So losing those guys and then like having to step in that role was a huge transition for just to both of us. So just from that aspect, it's completely different. Making sure that the corner and the nickel are all on the same page. Being in the back end of it, because you get to see the splits a little bit better. You get to see where the quarterback is aligned and all those things. You kind of now have to. At corner, you were just pretty much focused on, the number one receiver, the number two receiver, maybe three receiver. Nickel, you were focused on 2 and 3. Where now at safety, I'm looking at 1, 2, 3, the tackle, where the running back is aligned, where the quarterback is aligned. Like, so I'm looking at all of those things and kind of making a check off of that. And so that was, I mean, it was a huge transition for me. And, obviously, one of the hardest ones. And like, if you could even look back to the Florida State game when I got moved back to corner for a game, and just the speed that I played at, the level that I played at was just different, just because I was just way more comfortable at corner, and to where playing safety, it just took a lot more of a load just mentally, and so. It is different, and we put the work in. Me and Kyle, we put the work in, daily, after practice, before practice with Coach Joseph, and our assistant Asani, just to try to get it together. And so there were times for sure where I was maybe out there just freelancing, but there were also times where I had to rely on Kyle. It's like, yo, like, what's this called? Like, things like that. But no, it's a huge transition. I love safety though as a player, just because I'm in run fits. I'm still in run fits. Covering the slot. I'm still in the middle of the field, and now I get to come downhill more at a faster pace and all those things. And so it was a great opportunity for me. But looking back on it, it was definitely one of the the most challenging things that I've had to do during my time at Notre Dame.
Yeah. When people say checks, you have to make checks a lot. And I think what sometimes people don't understand, and I don't know how this worked specifically with you guys, but when I played, the coverage could change based on, like you said, the strength of the defense. Right. So if they switch the strength of the defense, you have to call that, and then you might have to change the coverage. Right. And the rules can get kind of confusing out there, right? Because an offense can throw a little wrinkle that you haven't looked at, and you wonder, like, do we need to switch? Like, do we need to switch the coverage? Do we need to switch the strength of the defense and that sort of thing? That's the mental aspect of it. Like you say, freelancing, like when I played safety in high school, it was like we were in 2 or 3. And you never switch the defense ever. So it was like that. From then, you don't have to think, like, you're just doing it, right? And in college, it was much different. When we went to college, we had tons of checks going in every game based on tendencies and that sort of thing, and personnel too. So that's what can make it. Very difficult. Well, I did want to talk to you about what makes a good nickel, because people, it's like the hardest position. Like I feel like before Tariq kind of took over that job in 21 and 22, it was like you were the nickel, and then like Notre Dame didn't have any other nickels like ever. Like it was like if Shaun Crawford can't do it, that like because in 2018, right? Like it was difficult to find a nickel, right? Like Nick Coleman was the safety in 2017. He was working a little bit at nickel. Houston Griffith was working a little bit at nickel in 2018. I mean, it was like Notre Dame can't play nickel. Like it was like you just it's too hard to fill, right? And so Jeremiah Wusu-Koramoah, he allows you to go to safety because he was such a good athlete, right? So it's like he could be the linebacker and the nickel. Like that's why he was so special. What is it about nickel that makes it difficult, and why are some corners not able to play nickel as well as some others?
Well, I think first off, it's just a different task. You're asked to do a lot more. You're asked to know a lot more. And so, I mentioned before, coming in, you kind of have to you have to know run reads a little bit, or know run lanes a little, run fits a little bit. You got to know like if the back there's a lot. So you got to know like if with the back is away, like you're based on the leverage or based on where the back's positioned at, your leverage on the run fit changes. And so even like RPO game is huge. And so even in that situation to where it may be a pass, your leverage in that pass it could change as well. And so there's a lot of things that can happen on the fly, but even just pre-snap, just whether it be alignment, and a lot of guys may not be comfortable playing that 4 yards, that 5 yards off, because that corner you're either pressed or you're pretty much like 7 to 8 yards off. There's a longer ways to go from the quarterback to the receiver. You also have the sideline as your help. There's a number of routes that a receiver can run on the outside that you only have to defend that corner. And so when you get to nickel position, I think it's just, you have to, first of all, to be comfortable at nickel, you have to learn a lot. And so you have to know a lot. And so I think the faster that a player can adjust and adapt to just, being closer to the line of scrimmage, the run fits, knowing leverage, and, because a lot of times you don't necessarily even have to, make the play, because you have a safety right behind you that's in the run fit as well. And so if I know, back's away and my run fit is outside, then if I could just, force the ball back inside, at the line of scrimmage level, then I know my safety is going to come up and fill. Or if I know if my leverage is inside, I can't get forced outside. And so little things like that, but that's all pre-snap awareness. And so you kind of, it's a full-time job, literally. And so at corner, you could just line up. If it's cover three to you means, I got my third. Cover three to nickel, it means I'm forced outside. Certain things could happen, but I could be pulled inside. If it is a pass, I got to get to the flat. Now, if the receiver doesn't go flat, I expand and hinge deep. If it is a run, I got to change my mind from, dropping in a zone to forcing on a run. You have to, you have to welcome tackling. You have to be, you have to want to tackle and things of that nature. So it's pretty challenging, but that was one thing that, I accepted, first in college. And I think that could be a tool that, some that coaches use is, find a guy who could be a great corner, but, he has potential to be a great nickel. Let them learn that, a full year early, because now when you're flying around and the defense, you're gonna have the best impact, because it's not just that talent that you can just place on the inside, because Tariq is very talented. Julian Love was very talented. Nick Coleman was freakishly athletic. And all those guys are obviously corners, but it's just a more of just a mental hurdle that you kind of got to get over, for you to be able to play fast like you would at a corner or would at like a safety position. So that's what I would say. Some guys who obviously that are great, are Tyrann Mathieu, Kenny Moore for the Colts. Those are two guys that, I still watch to this day that I love, that play the game really well, physical, or like attack the ball, great playmakers, not afraid to shed a block, not afraid to run into a lineman and, and take on a pull, like those type of things, like you have to be willing to do, and you just have to be instinctive. And I don't think that's taught. You kind of gotta have a little bit of it, and you gotta be risky. You got to be able to shoot some gaps. You got to be able just to take some risk, on certain plays and things like that. And you have to have great coverage, because a court like Richard Sherman, for example, he's great in the scheme of cover three, playing man, press, and all those things. Where at nickel, you can't be that. You can't play like that. You don't have the sideline help. You don't have the safety. You do have the safety in the middle of the field, but it's just leverage is different. Your alignment is different, and so you just kind of have to, find just the guy who can be comfortable, in uncomfortable positions, because that's pretty much, what you're in, pretty much the entire game.
So the players you just mentioned, yourself, Julian Love, Tariq Bracy, and Nick Coleman, they all have one thing in common, and that's that you were all high school running backs. What is it about being a nickel? And I have I have a thought, and I'm curious about what you say, but what is it about being a nickel and being a running back and having running back in your background?
Maybe that you're used to getting hit, you're used to contact, maybe. I'm not sure, but just maybe just the athleticism. Because I do think I don't think we weren't the, prototypical, like typical running back, like build
Right.
or anything like that. And so I think we were just, athletes. And so I think you maybe just start there, to where you have to get a guy on the team that is an athlete, maybe understands, the run game from playing running back a little bit. Not being afraid of being used to being in the box. I would say maybe those things. I never tied those things together, though.
I just thought of it right now, and I think you hit it on the last point, is being able to read the game at running back, and because the other way at nickel, because I think you need to be able to anticipate where the ball's going, because as a running back, you have to anticipate how the blocks are going to go, and then you need to pick the hole. I think it works the other way at nickel too, because and even at safety, like it works coming from the back. Because when I was a safety, I was very good, and it was interesting to me that you brought up you like the run fit aspect of it, because to me, I also liked it, even though I'm not very big. It's just like I was very good at the running game, because I could read out like this is where the play is going to go. Aside, like knowing your own run fit, but it's just like when you see a play on film, that's another part. Like when you know what they're trying to do, that also helps. But being able to see a play come out and you can read the blocks and read out the way the play is kind of developing, it allows you to kind of jump a play. Like you said, you take risks. Like it allows you to jump a play, because you kind of know, like this is what I'm seeing. Therefore, this is what the running back is seeing. And so I think that's interesting. And so I think that, I think that since there's four guys who kind of all fit that, like I just think like running back. So that makes me think like there's a Notre Dame player coming in, like Micah Bell, who plays running back in high school right now, and he's going to be on campus in June. Like that makes me think like he's going to be a good nickel option because of the fact that he has running back in his background. I thought that was an interesting thing. So recently you were talking to my my co-host on this show, Jamie Uyama, about the Notre Dame football program and kind of the talent on the Notre Dame football program. And so during your time at Notre Dame, you guys, so 2015 team, that team was perhaps a last second field goal by Stanford from going to the playoffs. 2018, you were a playoff team, or 2018, you were a playoff team, excuse me. 2020, you were a playoff team. You guys went to the playoffs against Alabama in the Rose Bowl. And that's kind of been Notre Dame's, I guess, ceiling for, I mean, that's what it's been, right? Playoff caliber program. Okay. And there was kind of a discussion about how quickly Notre Dame can rebound and rebuild and that sort of thing, like kind of refurnish the talent that's outgoing. Now I'm wondering what your feeling is on that. Like why is it that Notre Dame kind of has this hard cap at making the playoffs and then like not being able to advance further than that, like getting to the championship game?
I would say we played when we were in the playoffs the two times we played the national champs.
You played some unusually, like, well, I don't want to say unusually, maybe that's the wrong word to use. Clemson in 2018, that defense was remarkable, I guess, for better.
And I would also argue in 2018 we had some maybe J Love going down.
Yeah.
Hurt us a little bit because it was a completely different, like it was a close game before he went down. Mm-hmm. There was a run that ETN broke for a long run that ETN broke was just like a misfit on our end.
Yeah.
And so I don't necessarily think, even that game, like it wasn't a talent issue. We lost our number one corner that game, and you lose a number one corner against Justin Ross and T. Higgins. And you're probably gonna have a long day with Trevor Lawrence and throwing them the ball. Yeah. So you're probably gonna have a long day. And then, misfits on defense, like you miss one fit with ETN at running back. Goodbye. In 2020, we played the Heisman Trophy winner. We played, Mac Jones, a number of, first round talent just around Will Anderson, young Will Anderson.
Yeah.
And so I just think that, I'm not saying that like just because those teams, were national champions or just those teams were great that we didn't stand a chance. I think we played those teams the best they've been played all year. Like we've held, this is a bad stat, but it was because they still put up a lot of points on us, but we still held them like for 2020, we held Alabama to under their average. And as far as Clemson, like I said, like I think that's a different game if J Love is in that entire time and we don't have that one run misfit. But I would honestly say just a lot of teams first of all, a lot of teams don't get there. A lot of teams we've been fortunate enough to get there twice. Michigan now has been there twice, but I don't know the exact number, but the teams that have made it multiple times, it can't be like more than 6 or anything like that. I feel like
it's rare that someone has made it multiple times and not like usually they're like the champions, right? So it's hard to get it. So to your point, it's hard to get there.
Yeah, and so I think from that standpoint, like Notre Dame has done a great job of winning and being able to get to that game and have that opportunity to play for the championship. And now say like I would have loved to run into a TCU and our playoff game and say we do and then we go to the national championship and we play maybe the Alabama team that we played, or we play this Georgia team, and it's just like this Georgia team is like those Alabama just freaks. So I just honestly think it's just situation because, like I said, we played both the national, and not only were they the national champions, they were convincingly the national champions in the game that they played. Clemson blew out Alabama in the national championship the year we lost to them, and then Alabama blew out Ohio State the year we lost to them in the playoffs. So we lost, the playoff game to two convincingly, the national championship winners. And so I think that's a building point because I think before that we weren't there. I know in 2020 or 2012 we went to the national championship with Manti in that squad, and I do think now that we are consistently making the playoffs and recruits see that, I think the next step is now winning a playoff game and things like that. So I think it's a progression. I don't think it's going to be fixed, overnight. I don't think I think, Notre Dame, there are challenges, whether it is like recruiting and now with the NIL stuff and you got, SEC schools, just throwing the bag and anything like that to where it's going to be even harder now. But I don't know. I think Notre Dame fans are hard on Notre Dame, which, they have the right to be. But I do think in, the last decade or 2 decades, we've, made tremendous growth.
That is without question. That is without question. I think the I don't want to speak for fans, right? Because like the spectrum is so wide. Like,
Right.
some people are like unreasonable, and so I think some people are. And I think the most reasonable thing for me, and just looking at it, like just kind of like I've been following Notre Dame since I was 9 years old, right? So that's like 1990, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like that's a long time, and so I think there's space where it's like you would be foolish to talk to someone like you and just be like, oh, like you guys aren't living up to the standard or whatever. Because that's ridiculous. Like, in my opinion, it's just like, come on, like that's like you said, it's hard to get to the playoffs. And it just like in your time, right? I mean, even if you were just like if you were a freshman in 2017 or whatever, you went to the playoffs twice.
Mm-hmm.
And you had an undefeated regular season twice. That's hard to do, right? And there's obviously reasons why, you guys weren't at the level of like Georgia or Alabama. Okay, so there's that part of it. There's also the part where I kind of look at it and I think, I feel like winning is a choice, I guess, and I think of that from a university level. Like, are they doing, like, I think Notre Dame can keep the mission of the school and still make improvements there and still like do things to like bridge the gap and that sort of thing. And I feel like there's a little bit left on the bone on that end. And I'm just wondering like what that is. And I'm curious to talk to you about it, because it's like, what do you see? It's like you say there's work to do, right? Like, what is that work? What can the university do better to give the athletes a better chance at, and not just the athletes, but the coaches as well, like give them a better chance to bring in higher quality talent, and for the athletes to kind of be prepared to, face the top teams and come out on top. Like Notre Dame this year, they play Ohio State, USC, and Clemson, right? Like what can the administration do, and just the Notre Dame operation at large do to help the program along and to be at the top of college football?
I think I would probably just start with as far as coaching, because I think if you look at coaches who have great success at recruiting, like Brian Hartline. If you look, like, I think Brian Hartline could go to like Alabama, Georgia, wherever he could go, he'll get receivers. Just 'cause I think he has that relationship and he has that history with receivers. And I think that's something that we could build here at Notre Dame. And, maybe as a recruit, and maybe people didn't see Coach Kelly as that of a loving coach, of a loving guy, or just, I don't know, just outside. Because there's a lot of people who don't know Coach Kelly, or who they know Notre Dame football, and it's like, how is Coach Kelly? What is he really like? Like, I feel like he has like that question around him. And obviously, if you're a recruit and your family, like like people have that question, you probably have that question too. And then just as far as just like having, great position coaches. And I'm not too familiar with the coaches that we have now, but just being able to just to build the credibility up to show recruits that this is what we've done in the past. This is where we can get you. Obviously every high school kid coming out wants to go to the NFL. And so I think, having a track record of that will help a ton. And obviously these are new coaches. And so I know we got the receiver coach from Clemson. And I'm not, was he there with T and Justin Ross and like Amari Rogers? Was he on that squad?
Maybe he wasn't coaching them. So he might have been like a GA, or he might have been involved in some way.
Okay.
Because he was like a first time receiver coach with Baylor in 2021.
Okay, so I would say like a guy like Coach Mickens, who has coached uh, Sauce Gardner, who's coached Kobe Bryant, who's coached that Cincinnati secondary, and then come into Notre Dame and then saying like, okay, now we've worked with these guys as well. We've had Nick McLeod, we've had me or example like that. Like I think that could help bring in recruits, and I only think that'll get better to where Coach Freeman as well. Like I think he's really well liked and really well received in the media, and I think that'll only help as far as recruiting, and just having a structure in place. And I kind of talking to your co-host, we were talking about the draft picks and just the limited amount of draft picks that we had the past 2 years. But we've also had a lot of, transition within the coaching staff in the past 2 years. Because during my time, I was here for 6 years, and there was a point where we went through a lot of DCs. But my last 4 years, we had Coach Lee. Our D-line coach was Coach Elston my entire 6 years. For O-line, we had Heaston and I'm blanking on his Coach Quinn.
Coach Quinn, yeah.
So, but still tied to the Coach Quinn was still a part of the staff.
Right. Yeah.
Heaston was here. Receiver coach was Coach Dell, and then we switched it up a little bit. But Coach Kelly was always here. Coach Reese was here. Coach Reese has been here, that entire time. Then he got promoted as well. So we've had a lot of just structure and a lot of consistency within the building that when you talk about a guy who switches from who goes to nickel, who goes to corner, who goes to safety, I can only do that because the defense didn't change for me in 4 years. You've played with guys that are accustomed to the system for 4 years. And I think that helps a lot in terms of development. You look at a guy like Brandon Joseph, who comes from Northwestern, great 3 years, Big Ten, first team Big Ten, all this stuff, All-American, all this stuff. But he transitioned to a new defense his senior year with guys that were playing in a new defense themselves for a new DC at Notre Dame. That's a lot of transition for one player who's probably didn't get the opportunity to play as fast as he could or react. He was probably still learning throughout the season. So I think that stuff plays into it a little bit to where you look at this past season and you may look at guys to where it's like on the defensive side of the ball, like we went from Coach Lee's defense for 2-3 years. Like Tariq, he's played in Coach Lee's defense for 3 years. Clarence played in it for, I think, just 1 year. But you get a guy like Tariq now, his senior year, new DC, Coach Freeman comes in, completely different style of play, like more man, more, blitzing, things like that, where Coach Lee, we play a bunch of cover 4 and cover 6 and stuff like that. So it's completely different scheme. And then now you get another defense, and Coach Golden's defense. I'm not too sure of his scheme, but that's a lot of transition for a kid who's been accustomed to something, changes 1 year, and then now changes a whole new year. And so I would say, it's like keeping, some consistency with the coaching staff will be great. Being able to build up credibility, and that's like credibility meaning like a roster or guys that they've had put into the league. So now, Brian Hartline, he could just say, point to which receiver you want to be, like who, you know what I mean? Or you have even Coach Taylor, who had, Christian McCaffrey, and he had Bryce Love. And so now you see a running back like that into where even, working with a guy like that, it's like, okay, he knows some things. He's worked with great talent before. And so being able just to keep that going, I think in a coaching staff will be great. As far as like administration, I don't really know. Like I can only speak from like me having to get in, like being accepted to Notre Dame. And I don't think the test scores are like, I don't think you need like crazy like test scores.
But when I said administration, I was thinking more about like facilities and that sort of thing. Like the Goog has been like a huge talking point because Brian Kelly kind of referenced it, which I think a lot of people dismissed because they saw it as an excuse on his end. But I think Whether or not it's an excuse, I think the goo
No,
could
it is. The goo definitely can be fixed.
yeah,
I visited LSU, and I mean, there's a big difference between the
yeah,
Goog and whatever their facility called. I know Coach Kelly mentioned that he wanted food cooked, like, at the facility.
yeah,
Whereas at Notre Dame, I think we cook ours at the dining hall and then we bring it over and then we like reheat it with like the fire stuff. I don't know what it's
yeah,
really called, but to where their chef is like making it like in house and it's like freshly going through. They have a full cafeteria in there. That's something that like we necessarily don't have. Um, I would honestly say like that, like visiting like both those schools and seeing different facilities, like that would be, a major, like that would have helped my experience for sure. Um, but not saying like the food that they serve us at Notre Dame is, steaks and it's top of the line. Like
yeah,
that the quality doesn't get better. But I mean I guess but like in a era right now that we're in to where recruits care about that stuff and there's an emphasis on it. I think we have to get better in that area. Because I don't necessarily think that results to winning games. But it does equate to maybe getting a player. Like if you look at Alabama's facility, I think they just built an NIL hub within their facility. The weight room is, I like Notre Dame's weight room, but their weight room is pretty cool. And obviously there's things you can't compete with like weather and all that stuff,
yeah,
but just like putting like little just like cool things that like kids enjoy to see. I think it'll help just because I think like I said, we're in an era of a recruiting age where flashy, wins. You have the coaches picking kids up in Bentleys and Ferraris and going to the airport and having a band play there. Like all that stuff doesn't mean you're gonna win games at all. But if it is, it's going to help win some recruits, and I guess you got to toss a little bit more money to that stuff. But as far as our indoor football facility, it's definitely one of the best that I've
yeah,
seen across the country. But I don't like I don't know I struggle with it just because it's like I think maybe I think we'll get to the talent that will be able to play with anyone in the country at some point. I think things will even out at some point, and I think we have to find different ways for NIL to bring in more players as well. So I don't think it's going to be a quick journey. It kind of sucks that as new coaching's at the helm, like during this period, but it
yeah,
also could be good because we may need a change. We may need a new voice out there. So I don't really know like what I guess the administration could do. Just put more cool stuff in the Goog, but is that going to guarantee more recruits? I don't know. Is that
yeah,
going to guarantee like wins on the field? I'm not sure, but I would personally say like my main thing would be like consistency at coaching. Obviously, if a coach wants to move on and go to a higher position, like kudos to you. I'm not going to hold someone back, but I really think that during my time here, we were really successful because we had a lot of consistency at the coaching position, and the development of the players was the best.
yeah. So it's not to me. It's also not just a talent acquisition question. It's a talent retention one as well because like Logan Diggs, right? Like he's leaving Notre Dame, and this is a player who played a lot as a freshman. Was the starter in 2022 this last year. So it's not a playing time issue. He's going to be a key player for Notre Dame, and he left the program. Right? I don't know why he left the program. He was. There was always rumors that he just wasn't happy. Just not happy at Notre Dame, right? Just like he just didn't like it, right? And I don't know if like you change anything in that keeps someone around or whatever. I think my thing is like I've heard so many times over the last 5 years that it's hard to live in South Bend. It's hard to live in South Bend, right? Okay, then make it easier for you guys. Make it easier for them because, and the way I look at it is like if someone makes a renovation to their home, right? When the renovation's done and you like it, you like being there
Mm-hmm.
more, right? Like it makes you happier. And if you're happier, then that affects your whole life. Like it affects your mood. It affects the way you go to work. It affects the way you interact with your children. Like it affects it's not just the fact that you changed your house, right? And we don't think of that as like obviously not wins and losses because no one does, right? Like does the fact that I'm happier in my house, does that mean that I'm going to get a raise at work? Right? I don't know, but it means that you go to work in a better mood. And if you go to work in a better mood, then that increases your performance. And maybe that helps you get a raise, right? So like to me, it's like if you have a change that can be made, then change it, right? Making it better. That's just a will problem. You can do it, right? And you said yourself, like you can improve it. So like improve it.
I would say for sure, from my experience, I would say living for sure. It's funny that you brought up a house, but like you're forced to be in a dorm for 3 years.
Yeah.
And it's not like some dorms are really, not like apartment style dorms. Our dorms are literally dorms.
They're dorms, yeah.
Yeah, like they are like the epitome of a dorm. And so I would say that's something that you could, try to restructure to maybe it's 2 years, like just maybe even just a year and a half, like something to where you give them an option to stay in a dorm, because I do understand that is Notre Dame wanting to, be one, wanting to not, separate an athlete from a regular student or, bring them together and things like that. I do understand that, which even going through it, like I'm glad that I was in the dorm for a couple of years, because you meet friends that you necessarily wouldn't meet. Like you may not even have a regular student friend if I'm going from the facility, or if I'm waking up from my apartment, living with a player, going to the facility, going to class, and then going back home, to my apartment. So I do understand that, why they do that. And because I think Notre Dame is trying to, it is bigger than just, athletics. So I personally would love a change, on that. Maybe it's, maybe 2 years, year and a half. Because that would actually make, students, like athletes' lives better, I personally believe. I'm trying to think of anything else. Food, like I mentioned, like the chef, that would be nice. Little things like a parking lot for a player. Like it's as small as that may sound, like we get ticketed a lot just because we try
it
to park.
matters. It's
Yeah,
annoying. Like I don't like it. Like it's like
yeah.
it's just one of those things that it's just like little things make a big difference like that. And people don't like, people just don't like again, to buying the house, right? Like our house that we moved into, it had a really nice stove, and it had built in like surround sound. And it just like that kind of tipped the scales, right? And it's like not something you would ever put on, like this is what the house must have. You've never put it on there. But the fact that it's there, it's like it just adds. It just adds. And so that works in the other way, like a parking lot. Like why can't we have a parking lot? Why are we having to get paid for tickets all the time? It's just like that's the kind of thing.
Tickets and tolls add up. So I mean, it is tough because like you'll park. I mean, you'll have a workout at 7 a.m. and it's cold, like it's a winter workout, so it's cold, and you'll get done with the workout, and someone will come in like, "Yo, whose car is this? Like, this it's about to get towed." And so now you're running outside, like, so those were like, it's like multiple instances, like just with players throughout the team, to where it's like, it doesn't like, it doesn't, it will affect you, subconsciously.
Yeah.
But yeah, so a parking lot would be cool. I'm over here, I'm naming things that I wish I just would have had. But I know Stanford does a little. Stanford, I don't believe they drug test. And I'm not saying like this just to go buku, but like there are things that being a private university, like you don't necessarily have to do. Now they do the NCAA performance enhancing drug test, but they don't do, I don't think they don't have their own like their own school, like university wide drug test. And so, and that could be something to where I don't like, it could be easier on students there. Like I don't go to Stanford or anything, but that could be a reason, like Stanford students may like that reason. But little thing, like something little like that. But I think there's definitely changes that can be made to increase, student life, student well-being. That would, help result on the field, because you got a guy like Logan Diggs who's coming from Louisiana. Like everything is, probably different. Even just his dorm is probably different, and all those things that you want a kid to come in and have everything just be easy to him. And I think Notre Dame kind of, makes it challenging. Because that's like, there are kids here who can afford a house, or their parents can afford an apartment that they can stay in, and they're living their best lives. But here sometimes you have to just thug it out in the dorm, and ride a bike early in the
Yeah.
morning, winter in the winter season. So I think those are little things that can be done rather quickly, hopefully quickly, that could actually result in players staying for sure.
Yeah. To me, are you doing everything you can?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and maybe at the end of the day, like, it doesn't result in like his situation. Again, I don't know specifically what his situation is, but I just think either you're doing everything you can or you're not. And that's what I mean by, you know, winning is a choice. Like,
Mm-hmm.
to me, you have a chance to do everything possible. And that includes just like talking to guys like Shaun Crawford. Like, hey, how could we have improved? Like, what makes a difference to you guys? Like, I don't like getting my car towed. I don't like it. I don't like coming to practice and getting my car towed. I don't like having to pay a bunch of hundreds of dollars in tickets, right? Stuff like that. So that's kind of how I feel about it. Couple questions before I let you go, because you've been very generous with your time, and I really appreciate that. What is one game that you felt like, man, this game, it really bugs me, like, just even today, like, I don't like that game. I don't like how that game went, and I want it back.
Clemson ACC championship.
Okay, tell me.
Just because I don't think I played the best game personally. I don't think we as a defense played the best game, and I think Clemson learned a lot from the game that we played, obviously earlier in the year. They made adjustments that I don't think we made. I was frustrated because I don't think we made the same adjustments or the same amount of adjustments that they made. And it was the ACC championship. Like, that was probably the one and only time that Notre Dame will ever play in that. And it would have been nice to, get a ring or get something for that, for that season that we had. Just because, like, that was like one of our only opportunities or it is the only opportunity to play in that game, to be on that stage. And so just looking back on it, it's like, dang, like 2020 was a good year. We went undefeated, but we lost our last two games. So I would say that one.
What's your favorite game?
Clemson. Clemson 2020 season, just because it's one of those games to where it's like Notre Dame can't can't win the big game. It was one of those, and we were ready for it. Like, it was a tough year, just for the entire country. And so, but the only thing that people had to look forward to was football, and so we were grateful for the ACC and letting us play. And there was just so much emotion that went into that game, and being able to come out on top and win that game, and then also the fans rushed the field unexpectedly. It was the best game for sure.
Who is the best player you ever played against?
Ooh, played against would be, I would say, Trevor. And before it wasn't Trevor. Like, it wasn't Trevor until the ACC game, or because obviously we didn't play him the year before, the previous game, but just the difference that he made in that game, because it's the same team, same roster. Only difference is Trevor was at quarterback. And I remember vividly, in that game, we were in cover 6, and then we transitioned into like cover 2 mid play, and he like saw our shell, and he made some check and literally changed up the routes, and it was a touchdown. He threw a touchdown. So just like seeing the difference and what he brings, and like him being able just to run, use his legs, but also use his arm in that game. It was like he's special for sure.
What about played with?
Jeremiah Wusu-Koroma easily. Freak athlete. Like if you're in the wrong spot, he'll make you right. He's going to get his hands on the ball, so just be ready. He's explosive. He's a highlight reel. So like, and me just being able to play behind him, it was like I got a front row seat to all the big hits, all the crazy plays, and so him for sure.
His hit on the kickoff in 2019, I think it was against New Mexico.
Yeah,
that is the hardest hit. I think. I mean, because a lot of the like decleaters you see is when a guy doesn't see you.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And it's like he doesn't know. And so he's not giving you his full force.
Mm-hmm.
He came down and ran through a guy on a kickoff. So he's sprinting forward and he's sprinting like against him. That's the hardest hit I've ever seen. I can't and I can't believe like that's one of those as a player, it's a little bit scary because it's like, man, this is going to hurt,
Yeah, no, it was wild because even just that 2020 year, like players would fear him. Like you see our Florida State game, he had a big hit in that game.
Yeah.
Duke, they threw a bubble, he had a big hit in that game. Clemson, he had a big hit in that. So like he's just making plays and like it was play after play after play, and he's doing it in practice. He's doing it throughout the week. So being able to be around him like just each and every day and watch him work, and then just go see him put it on the field was special for sure.
Yeah. Shaun, tell us where we can find you.
So my personal Instagram is Shaun Crawford, ShauncRawf 20. And then same thing on Twitter as well, Shaun Crawford 20. And then our Varsity House podcast channels. You can find us at YouTube at just Varsity House Podcast. You can find us on Twitter at Varsity House Pod, and then on Instagram, Varsity House Podcast, spelled the regular way. So.
Yeah, good stuff, man. I love the interviews. I love doing them and I love listening to them. It's getting insight into great athletes and their process and kind of what they've been through and how they get to where they're at. I think there's a lot to learn there. So thanks again for coming on, Shaun. We're going to have you on again because I really enjoyed this conversation. So we'll talk to you maybe in the summertime or maybe after some games or something like that. We'll go over what Notre Dame's got going on. So thanks again for coming on, man. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. And be on the lookout. I just interviewed Father John Jenkins. So
okay.
We talked Notre Dame football, of course, and we talked, NIL and stuff. So some questions that you have or some, questions that others may have, you could get them, you may get them answered there. And so you can kind of see the progress that they're making as a university. So I'm sure that episode will be really fun and really cool. So stay on the lookout.
Awesome. Sounds good. Everyone look out for it. And one more time, thanks again. Have a good rest of your day. And we'll talk to everyone soon.